Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're looking at Some Assembly Required: Decoding 4 Billion Years of Life from Ancient Fossils to DNA by Neil Shubin. Shubin is most well known for producing one of the most monumental discoveries in evolutionary biology, Tiktaalik, which is a fossil of a transitional species between fish and amphibian from the Devonian period 380 million years ago. Shubin is also known for writing the 2008 bestseller and National Academy of Science's Best Book of the Year, Your Inner Fish, which, if you're interested in evolution, you don't want to miss this book. Shubin also wrote The Universe Within: The Deep History of the Human Body, which I have not read, but after reading this, I'll probably end up getting it. Some Assembly Required deals in some of the same concepts as Your Inner Fish, with a focus on genetics and how the evolutionary processes gave rise to the things that we see in bodies of living organisms. We look at major body plans and how genes evolve and interact in ways that work with the environment to produce things like salamanders or humans, or more fundamental components or bodily functions of them. We see how, by comparing genomes of any two creatures, we can discover things like when their most recent common ancestor lived, and from when did they acquire specific traits, be it fingers that evolved from fins, or how long ago they started producing a certain protein, say. This book uses cases of major discoveries in fields like genetics and biochemistry to illustrate an overarching theme, which can be thought of as the resourcefulness of evolution. So it has this bit of science history element to it, as almost all of these science books do. And I think this is really important because you have a restricted perspective if you don't learn about the history of the science, because then we don't understand what people were thinking before each important breakthrough was made. So Shubin does provide the history of the discoveries and the people who made them to set up the richer perspective. In one word, this book is about evolution. Mostly it's about how evolution combines, borrows, or repurposes traits which give rise to novel features over the history of life on Earth. And sometimes these features go on to evolve into things that exemplify life as we know it today. It's also about how nothing in evolution seems to have arisen for reasons that might be immediately obvious. For what purpose did feathers evolve? Flight, right? Well, no, it was for thermal regulation, but selection for feathers continued working with different factors, making contributions until flight was achieved. So it's easy to see why a person might think that it was as simple as feathers, therefore flight. We also look at the merging of different entities to give rise to more complex forms. Things like mitochondria and chloroplast evolving from the merging of bacteria and different cells, or how viruses can merge with an organism like a human and evolve into complex functions that never existed before. Here's an interesting quote from the book. Quote, by some estimates, 8% of our genome is composed of dead viruses, more than 100,000 of them at last count, end quote. There are a number of examples of things like this in the book. The scientific explanations in this book are usually kept at a pretty surface level of detail. You may find this a good thing or bad. There are several times when Shubin will explain an important concept in evolution, like exaptation or convergence, but he won't use those terms. So I felt like this was a missed opportunity for Shubin as an educator. I can see, though, that he may have wanted to keep it as accessible as possible. I'll say that overall, I thought the book was well written. You'll learn about a number of fascinating things that life does to produce the complexity and diversity we see today. As I was getting through each chapter, it felt a little bit like the book lacked direction, but then it kind of has this Karate Kid factor come together in the last chapter. Shubin does a really great job of wrapping things up in a way that reflect back into the time of the beginning of life on Earth, and it causes the reader to appreciate the rest of the book more. To spoil the ending of the book, the current state of all the evolutionary complexification has been the emergence of the modern human brain, which has discovered CRISPR and CRISPR is a genetic tool evolved by bacteria as a defense against viruses, and humans have figured out how to use this for precise gene editing. It represents the exponential leap from selective breeding to be able to achieve new organisms, and this all happened as a part of the complexification of biological systems of life on Earth. So I like the book, but in my opinion, Your Inner Fish is the better book of the two. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're interested in learning more about the history of life and the relationship between DNA and evolution, check out Some Assembly Required by Neil Shubin.